Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're exploring a side of human behavior that's, well, it's challenging, but really vital to understand. Dangerous personalities.
Mm-hmm. And we're drawing insights mainly from the work of Joe Navarro. He is a former FBI special agent, a criminal profiler.
Yeah, specifically his book, Dangerous Personalities.
Right. We've looked at a summary of that book and also an interview where Navarro himself talks about his experiences, decades of analyzing human behavior, often, the really harmful stuff.
So our mission today is to really get into Navarro's core ideas. He identifies these 4 key personality types he flags as dangerous.
And we want to understand how they operate, the kind of harm they cause.
Exactly. And crucially, how you can learn to spot these patterns and, protect yourself. And the perspective we're taking following Navarro, it's all based on what victims actually experienced.
And it's really personal for him, isn't it? His path to this work. He talks about being a young police officer back in 75 at the University of Utah. And this 15-year-old girl, Susan Curtis, she disappeared from a conference nearby, and it just haunted him.
Yeah, I read that. No witnesses, nothing really to go on at the time, just gone.
And the weight of not being able to help? Then, years later, the awful truth came out.
Ted Bundy.
Yeah. Susan Curtis was one of his victims, and Navarro said that just cemented his commitment. It wasn't academic anymore. It was about stopping that kind of suffering.
Wow. So that experience, and probably countless others in the FBI, really drove home that these aren't just theories. These are real people causing immense harm.
Exactly. And recognizing them is critical.
Okay. So let's dig into his specific approach then, because you said it's quite distinct. He's not like starting with the DSM or clinical manuals.
No, not at all. His starting point, his entire framework, is rooted in the victim's experience. What behaviors do victims consistently report seeing? What's the impact?
So his definition of a dangerous personality isn't really a clinical label.
Not primarily. It's more about the observable actions and the documented harm these individuals inflict on others.
And that harm, it's not just one thing, is it? He mentions psychological, emotional, physical.
Mental, financial. He uses this phrase, a debris field of human suffering.
That's vivid.
It really is, and I think it accurately captures the aftermath. It also helps clarify something, especially around the term narcissism, which gets thrown around a lot.
Yeah, you hear it all the time now.
Right. And Navarro points out, the clinical definition involves grandiosity, needing admiration, but often people just mean someone who's kind of self-centered.
Like talks about themselves too much.
Exactly. But from Navarro's viewpoint, looking at the victims, the real danger isn't just being self-absorbed, it's the devaluation of others.
Okay, explain that a bit more.
It's seeing other people as inferior, as objects, maybe tools to be used. That's the trait he links to the really profound harm victims talk about. It's how they treat people.
Not just how highly they think of themselves.
Precisely. It's the contempt, the lack of respect for others' rights and feelings that fuels the destructive behavior. It's the outcome, the impact, that defines the danger in his system.
Got it. So based on this victim-focused research, he zeroed in on 4 specific personality types, the ones that kept showing up as causing major harm.
That's right. The architects of that debris field, as you said. He focuses on the narcissist, the emotionally unstable, the paranoid, and the predator.
And he's looking for these clusters of behaviors, right? Patterns that consistently lead to people getting hurt.
And it's important, the sources mention this too, it's not unusual for someone to actually show traits from more than one of these categories.
That makes sense. Bad behaviors don't always fit neatly into boxes. Okay, let's break down each one. What are the specific traits and how do they become dangerous, from the victim's angle, using some of those examples?
Okay, first up, the narcissist. We think of attention-seeking, sure, but the sources emphasize other things too, like a real willingness to lie, to cheat, exaggerate constantly to get what they want.
And a lack of empathy.
A fundamental lack. They genuinely seem to struggle to get or care about how others feel, plus arrogance and often kind of a shocking lack of shame about what they do.
And that idea of seeing others as inferior, how does that play out?
Often as being bullies or tyrants in relationships, at work. If they see you as beneath them, your feelings, your needs, your rights, just not important.
But they can seem okay at first.
That's the tricky part. The sources stress they can be incredibly charming, seem intelligent, attractive even. They're good at putting on a mask.
So the danger is that combination, the hidden contempt and lack of empathy, mixed with a skill to manipulate and seem likable.
Exactly right. That combo lets them basically sacrifice other people for their own desires, exploit weaknesses, and feel totally fine about it. Causes huge emotional, psychological damage, sometimes physical too.
The story of Matilda was rough. Gave up her career for this charming guy.
Only to end up isolated, financially controlled, and then just discarded when he was done.
And the other case, Heda Nussbaum and Joel Steinberg.
Yeah.
That's just horrific.
It is. Steinberg, the successful lawyer, completely controlled and abused Heda, and then, in a rage, beat their little girl Lisa to death. Heda felt trapped, powerless.
It shows how victims get worn down feeling like they can't escape.
Yeah, it's a direct result of that systematic devaluation and control the narcissist imposes. Their belief in their own superiority kind of enables it.
Okay, moving on. Type 2, the emotionally unstable.
Right. The defining thing here, from victim reports, is the mood swings. Rapid, unpredictable, really intense. The sources say, like the weather.
But not just a bit moody. This is like dangerous volatility.
Exactly. It impacts everyone around them. They have this desperate need for support, for validation that can feel totally suffocating.
And sensitive to criticism.
Intensely sensitive to criticism, rejection, and if they feel slighted or their needs aren't met, they can just explode, lash out with rage, or turn it inwards, self-harm.
So the danger is the sheer unpredictability and the intensity.
Yeah, that volatility just creates this toxic, unstable environment. People close to them are always walking on eggshells, and in those moments of extreme rage or despair, they can be incredibly dangerous. To themselves, yes, but also very much to others.
The sources called them wound collectors. What's that about?
It means they don't let things go. They constantly bring up past hurts, real or perceived slights, things you did wrong ages ago.
To justify how they're feeling now.
Exactly. To justify their complaints, their anger, sometimes even aggression. It's like they keep this running tally of grievances to fuel the fire or manipulate people.
That example of the young man who killed his family after they tried setting limits. It's terrifying, but it shows how that internal storm, maybe fueled by those wounds, can just erupt.
It really does. It highlights how even when loved ones try, that internal instability can just overwhelm everything and lead to these awful impulsive acts.
Okay, the third type, the paranoid.
Yeah, these individuals are marked by this pervasive suspicion and mistrust. They genuinely believe others are plotting against them, often even people very close to them.
So they misread situations.
Constantly. Innocent actions get twisted into threats or signs of conspiracy. Publicly, maybe they just seem odd or eccentric sometimes, but internally that paranoia is all-consuming. They're hyper-focused on perceived threats, always defensive, struggle massively with trust.
And how does that internal state become dangerous externally?
Well, because they truly believe they're under attack, their actions, even extreme ones like violence, can feel like self-defense to them.
Okay.
So it can lead to really controlling behavior, manipulation, trying to isolate people, stalking, harassment. They can cause huge disruption in families, workplaces, anywhere, constantly questioning motives, seeing plots.
And they're wound collectors too, you said.
Yeah.
But differently.
Yeah, similar idea, but their focus is different. They collect evidence, perceived slights, inconsistencies, anything to confirm their suspicions, to prove to themselves that, yes, people are out to get them, so their actions are justified.
That story about the husband making his wife low crawl to the door, it sounds so bizarre, but it captures that isolating, controlling reality.
It really does. And the sources actually connect this kind of thinking, this grievance collecting that feels like justification, to things like workplace shootings or hate crimes, really serious outcomes.
Chilling. Okay, finally, the predator. This one just sounds overtly dangerous from the name.
It is. Predators are defined by an almost total lack of empathy and this deep drive to control, to dominate. They see other people not really as people, but as objects. Prey. Things to be used. Navarro calls them human rights violators.
And highly intelligent, manipulative.
Yes, often incredibly so. Masters of disguise. They use charm, deception. They can mimic emotions really well to create this false sense of security, lure victims in before they strike.
So they're skilled at spotting weakness.
Exceptionally skilled at identifying and exploiting vulnerabilities. The danger comes from this very deliberate, calculated approach. It's not impulsive rage or paranoid fear driving them. It's pure power, control, personal gain. That can mean financial exploitation, stalking, harassment, or, yeah, even murder.
So the key difference is the cold, calculated, intent,
Yeah.
the using of people.
Exactly. The other types might cause harm out of their instability or distorted view of reality. The predator harms because they see others as mere means to an end, and they hide it so well. That makes them incredibly hard to identify until often it's too late.
The sources mentioned the spectrum, sociopathy, psychopathy, but said globally, victims often just see them as bad guys.
Yeah, based on the severity and the clear intentionality of the harm. And the examples really drive it home. Ted Bundy again, charming, manipulative, horrific crimes.
Right.
Or that story of the son who just cleaned out his 67-year-old mother's bank account, saw her purely as a resource, no remorse whatsoever, that complete lack of conscience, that objectification. It's terrifying.
Listening to all this, the descriptions, the examples, it makes so much sense why victims struggle, why there's that disbelief, thinking, no, people don't really do that.
That incredulity, yeah, that difficulty accepting someone could be so intentionally harmful. It's a massive barrier to seeing the truth and getting safe. Navarro really emphasizes that pushing past that disbelief is the absolute first critical step.
So how do you do that? How does he suggest victims overcome it?
Education is number one, he says. But really internalizing the fact that people with these severely flawed characters do exist and they will cause harm.
Not because they're misunderstood or you did something wrong.
No, as the sources put it, because they can. You have to kind of stop trying to find a relatable why that makes sense in your own world or trying to figure out how to fix them. The why doesn't matter as much as the fact that they cause harm.
So accept the reality of their capacity for harm rather than searching for reasons you can understand or excuse.
Exactly. And validation is huge here. The sources talk about using tools like checklists, the ones Navarro developed based entirely on victim reports.
How does that help?
Seeing that pattern of specific harmful behaviors written down in black and white can be incredibly validating. It helps a victim think, okay, this isn't just in my head, this isn't normal, this is intolerable, this is inhumane. It helps them trust their own experience and understand it's absolutely not their fault. Being unaware or trusting isn't a fault.
So based on that, trying to work things out, negotiate, compromise, probably not going to fly with these personality types.
Other sources are really clear on this. With these deep-seated, dangerous patterns, trying to reason with them, trying to find common ground, it just typically doesn't work.
So what's the answer then?
Navarro, based on all those victim experiences, even looking back historically, he concludes the only efficacious solution is distance.
Just get away.
Essentially, yes. Create distance. Physical, emotional. Just like people throughout history have had to separate from those whose harmful behavior couldn't be changed, it's often the necessary path to safety and being able to heal.
That sounds incredibly hard, especially if it's family or someone you're deeply connected to. But understanding why that's the recommendation is key. So if you recognize these patterns, immoral, illegal, dehumanizing behaviors, especially a cluster of them, there's a real reason for the negative impact you're feeling.
Yeah, there was this quote from a victim in the sources that really struck me. Eventually, you get used to the mud.
Wow. That's heartbreaking. Speaks volumes about how someone can slowly adapt to absolutely awful conditions.
Right, and that leads to these really crucial questions Navarro asks victims, trying to shift their focus back to their own survival, their own well-being. He asks, how long is this sustainable? And how much more are you willing to tolerate?
Powerful questions.
Yeah.
So, okay, recognizing the patterns, understanding maybe distance is needed. What other practical steps do the sources suggest for someone actually in this situation?
Well, based on the material, key things are using resources like those checklists we talked about, getting that validation. Seeking professional help is vital, though the interview did note sometimes things like insurance can be a barrier, which is a real problem.
Sure.
And crucially, making alliances, building a support network, finding people who believe you, who see the reality of what's happening. That's absolutely essential.
So this deep dive into Navarro's work, it really gives this powerful kind of ground-level view of dangerous personalities, filtered through the people they've actually harmed, not just theory.
Yeah, understanding these types from the victim's perspective, learning to spot those specific destructive patterns, validating your own gut feelings. These are fundamental steps towards protecting yourself, towards safety.
It's definitely heavy stuff, but being informed about these patterns really is empowering, isn't it?
Right.
It lets you see the world, see people maybe with a bit more clarity, trust your instincts when something feels wrong.
And navigate things with more awareness and confidence. It's not about being scared all the time.
Right.
It's about being vigilant, recognizing the signs so you can make informed choices for yourself.
Okay, so we mentioned earlier that Navarro's checklists, based on all those victim reports, show that people often have traits from multiple categories. So here's something for you to think about after listening. How might those combinations actually play out? Think about, say, a narcissistic predator or maybe an emotionally unstable paranoid type. How would that unique mix of traits show up in their behavior? And what specific challenges might that create when you're trying to recognize the danger and keep yourself safe? It's definitely a complex layer to consider.